Hello, at the end of March 2021, Audio Modeling released version 3 of the SWAM Solo Strings bundle. In this video I'll demonstrate the instrument and sound improvements after the first week of experimentation with my Akai electronic wind controller. You'll hear solo violin and string quartet phrases. Two weeks ago, Audio Modeling released version 3 of the SWAM Solo Strings bundle. This is a complete makeover with new GUI, instrument engine and improved timbre. Also, Midi control has been expanded significantly. I've been playing these new virtual string instruments now for about a week with an Akai EWI 5000 as Midi controller. You'll hear the performance and expressivity achieved in a number of solo etude and string quartet phrases. The SWAM Solo Strings bundle includes a violin, viola, cello and double bass. The complete redesign in version 3 was released at the end of March 2021. The GUI now looks like the solo brass bundle and each instrument is available as standalone app and as plugin. Remember that these instruments were created with a physical modeling approach. There are no samples involved. A RAM footprint is almost zero, but these instruments may stress the CPU. Here is the interface main window with the real-time performance parameters shown at the center. Instrument settings are at the top left, divided into a number of categories, such as the set of advanced instrument parameters and the advanced MIDI parameters. The latter are relevant for playing with the Akai EWI controller. These pictures show the interface of the previous release, version 261, that you will also hear in the audio comparison examples later. Clicking the version 3 top right icons opens the MIDI settings window, with a list of presets for keyboard, breath, wind and other controllers. Here are my settings for the Akai EWI 5000. The breath sensor generates CC11 data. The glide plate is used for CC1, the vibrato controller. I use the bite sensor to control bow pressure and vibrato rate. I try to avoid pitch bend in the current set of examples. After recording MIDI patterns, I do limited editing in order to benefit from the bow pressure, position and accent controls available for SWAM instruments. All examples in this video were created in one day of recording, editing and mixing in Cubase. Here you see the MIDI mapping table for SWAM instruments, a long list of controllable parameters. A new addition I find most useful is the option of editing the MIDI response curve, a feature I used already in these first EWI recordings. Now it's time to listen to the solo violin performing short etude phrases demonstrating dynamics, articulation and expressivity. Each phrase is recorded twice, first with the old SWAM instrument, then with the new version. Note the differences in timbre, articulation and dynamics. For the improved version 3, I show the MIDI signal recording. This example contains legato and staccato 16th note patterns that are hard to play in the sense of keeping tonguing and fingering in sync. The new version still has this problem, but is easier to handle with the EWI as input controller. The phrase from Etude 23 has many dotted 8th note, staccato 16th note patterns, again requiring good coordination and delicate playing. While the old version sounds somewhat sloppy, the new release definitely has more phrasing clarity and more expressive character, with a tendency to overdo the vibrato. One of my gripes while playing EWI is performing the multitonguing technique. Although it is possible to apply double and triple tonguing, the instrument mouthpiece signal is unreliable and does not identify separate staccato notes. This affects both sample and model-based instruments. SWAM copes with this problem reasonably well for woodwinds and the old strings, but for the solo brass bundle it is a serious limitation. Therefore, I was most curious and pleasantly surprised to discover how much the staccato response has improved. Here's the old instrument in a double tonguing exercise. Note the almost complete staccato failure in the descending scale at the end. This MIDI recording plot shows the EWI signal. Although the breathing signal at the bottom shows consistent regular 16th notes, at the top we see note attacks being missed. Also, there are very short extra notes due to the tip of the tongue starting or stopping the breath. It's impossible to reach high note-on velocities when playing staccato. The level jumps between two low to medium values. The scale at the end reveals the tongue-fingering coordination difficulty. And finally, the bottom CC68 pattern demonstrates how the EWI signal processor erroneously labels many notes as legato. It is this horrible situation that the wonderful SWAM instruments have to cope with. Here's an etude with double tonguing patterns. These are juxtaposed with legato patterns and quarter notes with accents. The new violin does significantly better, except for the descending staccato scale. It all becomes even more problematic when trying to play triple tonguing. The EWI Midi recording misses many staccato notes and the closing scale is a mess. This is where I felt I reached the EWI performance limits. It is a coincidence, but now the old violin performance is more staccato than the new. I could do better, but the recording becomes trial and error, where I might hit on a good staccato performance occasionally. It is far easier to play staccato patterns on a MIDI keyboard, for sure. The final fast etude phrase mixes staccato with legato playing, and it is my ultimate multitonguing test. It takes a virtuoso to keep tongue and fingers in sync at this tempo. It is a forte phrase, but that is impossible to achieve with my Akai EWI. Here, drawing and editing the MIDI patterns might be a lot quicker than recording multiple takes. It's time to relax and listen to a few short string quartet examples, combining 2 violins, viola and cello, all from the new version 3 release. We start with the opening phrases from 2 movements from the well-known Schubert string quartet Der Tod und das Mädchen. The opening movement is a test case for staccato triplets, accented notes, contrasting dynamics and quasi-imitation in more or less independent parts. There is no EQing and you're hearing the out-of-the-box timbre. Movement 2 has theme and variations form and starts with this pianissimo phrase, where close coordination of note lengths between parts is important, with ever so slight dynamic changes. I was really impressed by the SWAM string quartet sound and felt inspired to try the opening measures from the Maurice Ravel string quartet in F major, which is compulsory reading for every arranger that wants to write for a small string group. The score shows soft dynamics with limited swelling and an overall ascending-descending pitch curve with apex in the middle. The Midi signal plot from Cubase shows the recorded signals at the top for first violin, where I did very limited editing. Afterwards, I added the bowing control by drawing lines shown at the bottom. So, these were my first week experiments with the new audio modeling SWAM Solo Strings version 3. In order to share my impressions, I spent the weekend to prepare these solo violin etude and string quartet recordings. I really think the Akai EWI 5000 with now a decade-old sensor technology is a seriously limiting factor for realistic classical music string playing. I would never dare to do this live, yet it is my most suitable controller for achieving maximum expressivity. As you may have concluded yourself, the SWAM strings have improved a great deal. Timbre and responsiveness are amazing, Midi controllability a blessing. In these demonstrations I did not use equalization, up to 1 decibel compression, no limiter. I had to control breathing carefully to stay in appropriate expression value ranges. And it would have been easy to create overwhelming crescendi. By the way, I have been paying for all my audio modeling instruments. I am not affiliated to nor sponsored by any company, but I have the greatest respect for this model-based instrument design approach. Subscribe if you like this video. I share lots of free information, but do welcome donations in support of my online production efforts. To that end, there is a PayPal donation link in the description. Also visit my website for more content, and there you will find articles and ebooks in the webshop. Hope to have you back on this channel next time, and thanks for watching.